This is the iPhone 15 Pro Max and I have it for several months now. And it makes me feel stupid owning dedicated cameras like this Leica or the Nikon ZF. Let me explain. Hi and thank you for clicking on this video. My name is Furk, aka Phil, and as I already mentioned, today I want to explain why this iPhone specifically makes me feel stupid sometimes for owning cameras, and in my specific case, multiple cameras with multiple lenses. If you compare the size of an iPhone or any smartphone, even the big ones like this Pro Max, it's still small and compact compared to something like a dedicated camera, especially when you take full-frame camera bodies as a reference. This you can just put into your pocket and you can grab it anytime. Also, nowadays all high-end and mid-end smartphones have multiple focal lengths. In case of this iPhone, you have an ultra-wide lens with 13mm, you have a wide with 24mm, and you have a telephoto with 120mm. The iPhone 15 Pro, not the Max, has the 70mm as a telephoto lens. In this small compact form factor you have 3 physical focal lengths and you don't have to deal with lens changes. Also, in addition, nowadays all the modern smartphones can shoot RAW. That means you can do a lot of post-editing to give your smartphone image a specific look, and I guess you already saw several videos about these. Nowadays, if you are good at editing, you can make your image quite close to a dedicated camera regarding editing the look. Also, since this is a smartphone, you have basically a small computer in your pocket with a camera on it. That means you can edit on the spot. All the RAW files you shot on this device, you can directly open your editing app and start editing right away. You don't have to transfer your images to a computer. If you have a normal camera, normally you have to gimbal out the SD card out, put this into your computer, copy that on your computer, and then you can start editing your image. All these additional steps you can skip, and as already mentioned, just start editing right away on your smartphone. Since you're already on your smartphone regarding editing, you can also share your images directly on social media or with your family, in your WhatsApp group or iMessage group, whatever. And here again, it's everything on one device. You can distribute your images at any time, just after editing them. Also, again, regarding editing, but also regarding image quality, nowadays high-end smartphones like this iPhone have high megapixel sensors. This specific one, I think the iPhone 14 also has it already, have 48 megapixels, and that's a lot of megapixels where you can just crop into your image or reframe, and these images can just look amazing, although shot on a smartphone. If you look into video, all modern smartphones have nowadays quite impressive built-in stabilization functionality in it, so your footage basically can look like an action cam. You can really get smooth footage out of any smartphone nowadays, especially the latest ones. One extra new feature which these iPhone 15 Pros has in their sleeves is regarding the recording of ProRes log footage. Basically, you can record in a flat picture profile to get the most dynamic range and then color grade it afterwards in post to make the footage look like high-end dedicated cameras. I also assume you have watched several videos about that topic already and know what I'm talking about. If you look at all these points, I think it's quite easy to ask, why on earth would anybody spend so much money on a dedicated camera like this Nikon ZF, which costs body only over $2,000, or spend even more money on something like a Leica M6, which is just an analog camera, and just shooting with something like this film, which also costs extra money every time you want to shoot an image. Depending on where you live and what kind of film stock you choose, a roll can go between $5 and $25, excluding the cost of developing film. So why do we camera enthusiasts buy all that gear, although the benefits of something like the smartphone is quite obvious? Even though these high-end phones cost over $1,500, it's still cheaper compared to a dedicated camera setup. So why spend that money? Well, I think since you are also a camera enthusiast like me, you know why you use cameras and not the smartphone. But for the purpose of this video, I will list them anyway. And when I made my thoughts for this video, it's quite funny because all the arguments, at least what I will bring up, are almost the same arguments which some people use to bash against high-end and luxury cameras like Leica and Hasselblad. But let's dive into it, because the first thing which camera enthusiasts, photographers or videographers say is definitely the word experience. The experience is just a different one compared to something like a smartphone. On a smartphone, everything is automatic. Pull up your smartphone, perhaps you look at the composition and the lighting, and then just press on the screen, and then you have your picture. And for most people on this earth, that's what they want. They want to take a quick picture and don't want to fiddle around regarding any settings like shutter speed, ISO and aperture. But we camera people want that experience. We want to take control over the exposure triangle, and that's why we grab dedicated cameras which can provide us this kind of control. I'm illustrating this right now just with the Nikon ZF, but every camera has their dials regarding, perhaps not in this retro design, but in principle you have shutter speed, ISO and aperture, and depending on your shooting style you have aperture priority, shutter speed priority, or you go manual at all settings. Another part of the experience is the tactile feel. That's also the reason, I guess, why a lot of people are nowadays gravitated to film photography. They don't want to let the modern cameras take control regarding autofocus or the shutter speed, etc. And therefore there's also a number of people who are liking to shoot analog or film photography, and here you have the full control, and every mistake you make, it's your mistake and not the gear. And that's also somehow the fun of it, I guess, at least for me. Another part or at least for a very long time, is that all the dedicated cameras had much better image quality compared to phone images. I guess nowadays that's a little bit discussable, because if you have the right lighting, phone images can just look amazing, especially when you are able to edit them, and then they can come close to something like a full frame image, depending on the scenery, I guess. But still, I myself still have the feeling I know when an image was taken by a smartphone, especially when it's not edited. There's a lot of digital sharpening going on depending on the phone. The skin tones are sometimes also looking weird. When the image was taken in RAW and that person did the editing correctly, then it's a little bit harder to find the difference. But in general, these digital sharpening look you don't have with these dedicated cameras. The look comes from the lenses and the rendering of these lenses. With fast lenses you have the ability to create creamy background bokeh, especially when you do portraits. That's also possible with telephoto lenses to get the compression. These kinds of stuffs are not possible on smartphones, at least to look naturally. Sure, you can get digitally a bokeh on your smartphone, or nowadays you are also able to add this in Lightroom, but still, in my opinion, that doesn't look as natural like a dedicated camera with the correct lens. And as already mentioned, since there is the possibility to switch lenses on dedicated cameras, you can choose a fast lens to get amazing results in low light. These phones right now also have some night modes here. That's basically a long exposure mode and works quite well, but only for still objects. As soon as you have some persons or vehicles running through your image, they get blurred out because the shutter speed is too low. You are not able to freeze the action. That's something you can do on a dedicated camera with a fast lens, where the aperture just opened up enough to get more light in, and then you can also dial in your shutter speed to freeze the action also in low light. I'm not sure if my rant makes sense, but in conclusion you could say that why we camera enthusiasts pay for an extra camera is just accommodating these small gaps which these phones still have nowadays. Better image quality regarding the look. A lot of people still say that there's a full frame look if they use full frame cameras or see a full frame image. You have the possibility to swap lenses to get a fast lens, especially for low light or for background blur, especially when you have the possibility to use longer lenses, telephoto lenses, to get an extra reach optically. That kind of image just looks much better than a digital zoom on these kinds of smartphones. And depending on the genre of your photography, dedicated cameras are a much better tool, of course. Just a few examples as sports photography, wildlife, where you just want to have that telephoto for more reach and also want to freeze the action. That's something these kinds of cameras just don't do, but they also don't have to, because these are aimed for the mainstream of people. In all the arguments I mentioned before, why we use or like dedicated cameras, normal people are not willing to pay so much money to get a little bit of control or a little bit of more image quality. They just stick with their phone, and that's also okay, because they don't see any value to spend thousands and hundreds and thousands of dollars for a little bit image quality. And that's why I find it also a little bit funny, because all these kinds of arguments some people also use against Leica or Hasselblad buyers. Why spend all that money just for a little bit more experience or whatever? But at the end, if people find some use to buy these kinds of gear and they are willing to pay for that, even if it's just something like prestige, why should anybody condemn them? Everybody has their preferences, their own hobby. I, for example, don't drink much nowadays, with kids nothing. Therefore I don't have any use for something like a wine opener which costs several $100s. But I'm glad to spend that kind of money on a lens. So yeah, not sure if my rant makes sense to you. As a conclusion, I really love these kinds of smartphone cameras. Every year or every 2 years they get better and better, and they make it quite easy to capture the moment at any time, because at least for me, I carry my phone every day in my pocket. That's not the case for the cameras, unfortunately, because they are still bigger than a phone to put into the pocket, especially when you take bigger bodies like mirrorless cameras. But for me, it's a great addition to have something like a phone to take pictures and video. They have very good quality and you can mix it into your other gear mix, I guess. Right now I'm rocking the iPhone in addition with a point and shoot film camera. So basically having a digital camera in my pockets where I can edit at any time the images, but also having something like this Olympus new one to get unique looking shots because they are film. Yeah, that's more or less my daily carry, but perhaps I can also dig deeper into that topic if you want. And regarding this small little point and shoot, I will also make a video because it's just fun to shoot with that. Alright, enough. If you're still here, thank you very much for your time watching my rant. You are the one who deserves the like. And if you want to support my small little channel, just check the affiliate links below in the description. If you're already down there, leave a comment. What's your thought on this topic? And click on one of these videos if you like to continue watching my channel.